teen killers reacting to life sentences. Francesa Torres, Nicholas Evans, and Khalil Miller.
You have 3 warrants for armed robbery and 1 warrant for felony murder.
Teenagers. Teenagers can be cruel and insensitive, making high school a living hell for a lot, especially when it comes to crushes or relationships. But nothing can compare to the lengths Francesa Torres, Nicholas Evans, and Khalil Miller went to. In October 2018, in Gwinnett County, Georgia, the body of one William Tunches was found in the woods with a gunshot and blunt force trauma to the head. But you'd be shocked to find out it all started with a little crush and some online chit-chat. 21-year-old Tunches had been contacting 17-year-old Francesa Torres, trying to light the classic adolescent love spark, when things backfired. Francesa agreed to meet him in the forest for some intimacy, but some that he would have to pay $300 for. Tunches took his car and drove to the middle of nowhere, where he was met by Francesa. But he was shocked to find 2 other teenagers were there, Nicholas Evans and Khalil Miller. It turned out that it wasn't the kind of night Tunches had expected, as the 3 teenagers tried to rob him at gunpoint, and when he resisted, Miller and Evans did not hesitate to violently take his life. With help from the townspeople and a previous series of armed robberies under their belt, the 3 teenagers were arrested and charged with murder, aggravated assault, and robbery.
Those are the charges that are pending right now.
With a sentencing that played on the grey area of some judgments, all 3, including Torres, who technically did not assault Tunches, were sentenced to life in prison. The reaction on their faces in court said it all, especially Torres, who felt that the sentencing was unjust and that she had no blood on her hands. What do you think? Was Torres unjustly sentenced for a murder she didn't commit? And was Tunches totally in the clear, despite Torres being a minor? Killing is one thing, but nothing grinds gears more than the unjust death of a child, especially since Dylan Schumacher. Teenage parenthood was never meant to be easy, but the death of a toddler adds more layers to the difficulty. Unfortunately, this is the pain Dylan Schumacher caused. It all started in March 2013 in Springville, Utah. Dylan was supposed to look after his 16-year-old girlfriend, Ashley Smith's 2 kids, when he quickly found out that he was far from suited for this job. His girlfriend's toddler, Austin, was crying non-stop. Instead of doing literally anything a rational human being would do to calm the child down, Dylan psychopathically instead decided that it was a good idea to muffle Austin with a pillow whilst hitting him 3 times. What on God's earth was going through his mind is beyond anyone. The toddler horrifically died from a bleed on the brain, and thankfully Dylan was soon behind bars. But after some back and forth between the defense and the prosecution, Dylan was charged with second-degree murder, and no amount of crying in court was going to help him then. Despite pleading not guilty, Dylan received 25 to life for his murder. One family friend of Ashley Smith said, "There is no excuse and no valid reason to take a child's life. None." At least Dylan felt remorse and sadness for what he had done, because Shondell Jackson. Some criminals get an epiphany of the mistake they had done at court, but some relish in the madness they'd created, such as Shondell Jackson. With a case that turned the entire courtroom into a madhouse, it started in July 2009 in River West, Milwaukee, when a 19-year-old Shondell Jackson and another mugger decided to rob an unassuming Nathan Potter, who was on his way to his apartment. Jackson was armed with a gun, and once he realized that Potter had no money to give him, he cruelly dispatched him as if he was just a means to a greedy end. Justice ran its course in less than a month, and Jackson was arrested and faced first-degree homicide, which he seemed to disregard completely, smirking in court and acting smug towards the victim's family as if he was rubbing it in, going as far as being escorted out of the courtroom. The crime was so unhinged and inexplicable that Nathan Potter's dad had this to say: "There is nothing that can be said to bring back our Nathan. Is there such a thing as pure evil? We think so." Jackson's family was in complete denial of his heinous crime, though, as they wept and screamed in court when Jackson received a life sentence with no chance of parole. Jackson couldn't let justice go through smoothly, however, as he kept eyeing the victim's family to the point where he had to be wrestled to the ground in the midst of all the crying. Blunt is one thing, but this is a whole new level of provocative. Nathan Potter's dad had a point about some people being pure evil, as Dexter Johnson. As the world has been slowly moving away from extreme forms of punishment, but some people commit such monstrous acts that it's the only thing they deserve. One of these people is Dexter Johnson. In June 2006, in Harris County, Texas, Johnson and 4 others turned a late-night romantic car ride into a scene of true horror. Dexter and his gang of partners carjacked Maria Apparent's and Huy Ngo's car, taking them on a joyride. If only it had ended at a mere thrill ride, but Dexter decided to make matters worse for both the couple and eventually for himself, as he sexually assaulted Maria Apparent in the back seat. That night had already witnessed terror beyond belief, but horrifyingly, one more act of true evil was still in Dexter and the group's hands, as they murdered both Maria and Huy. As you can imagine, there was not much room for debate on this case, as the 2007 trial was pretty straightforward. What kind of justice would it be if there was debate over literal rape and murder? Dexter was found guilty of both charges, and although he was only 18, he destined himself to a short life as he was given the death penalty. The death penalty is no easy matter, and it sent someone in the back of the courtroom into a frenzy. Upon hearing them, Dexter himself lashed out, and soon the entire court was out of control. When faced with death, Dexter's antics couldn't help him, as he was restrained. 20 years later, Johnson's execution was halted in an investigation of intellectual disability. Whether he deserves the chair or not is up to the courts. Speaking of rulings that were up in the air, our next killer raised some eyebrows over whether or not she deserves her judgment. Jennifer Mee. Social media sensations, like child stars, can take dark and depressing turns, just like in the case of the hiccup girl, Jennifer Mee.
The sound echoes through the TIA terminal, announcing the arrival of 15-year-old Jennifer Mee.
I get really bad chest pain, abdominal pains, throat pains, back pains. It's unbelievable.
At 15 years old in 2007, Jennifer rose to trend for her unusual, uncontrollable hiccups that landed her the name Hiccup Girl. But what started off as a goofy, harmless nickname by the press might have actually been a shocking villain moniker. This turn to villainy happened in 2010 after being cured, when Jennifer agreed to meet up with a Shannon Griffin in an abandoned house to sell him marijuana. Unbeknownst to Griffin, he was robbed at gunpoint by Jennifer and 2 other accomplices. It didn't end there, however, as Griffin was tragically shot and murdered. Jennifer did not pull the trigger herself, but she was charged with first-degree murder, same as the other 2, and after several arguments as far as debating Jennifer's psychological condition, she received life imprisonment without parole.
The jury having found you guilty of murder in the first degree, Miss Mee, I will adjudicate you guilty and sentence you to life in prison without parole.
The courthouse became a tragic scene, with Jennifer as a near Shakespearean tragic character, crying in court, either for what she had done or for the fate that awaited her.